It didn't start the way you'd expect. There was no screaming match, no lipstick on a collar, no mysterious phone call late at night. It wasn't some dramatic confrontation. It was quieter than that. Simpler. It started with a bank notification. A single message. That's all it took. I was sitting in the break room at work, eating leftover pasta out of a Tupperware, when my phone buzzed. I remember because it was one of those completely unremarkable moments. One of the thousands you forget about a day later. I almost ignored the alert, assuming it was just another spam text or social media update, but something about it made me check. It was from the bank. A charge. $142.67 at a restaurant I didn't recognize. At first, I just stared at the name of the place. Amare, downtown. Upscale, trendy, the kind of place where you need a reservation a week in advance and wear shoes that hurt by the end of the night. I'd driven past it before, but we'd never gone. I'd mentioned it once as a someday date night spot. Lily had said it looked pretentious. Her word, not mine. So why was her card swiped there? I didn't react right away. Honestly, I told myself it was probably work-related. Maybe she went out with coworkers. Maybe she picked up the tab. Lily's job had her entertaining clients sometimes, and she never asked me to micromanage her spending. I'd always trusted her. We trusted each other, or at least I thought we did. So I put the phone back in my pocket and went back to my lunch. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not because of the money, but because she hadn't mentioned anything about dinner plans. Not the night before. Not that morning when she kissed me goodbye on the way out the door. Nothing. And Lily wasn't forgetful. She was meticulous. Calendar always synced, planner always full of color-coded notes. She didn't just forget plans, especially not expensive ones. That night, she came home a little after 9:30. Her heels clicked against the hardwood as she walked through the entryway, humming something under her breath. She was smiling. Maybe too much. That's what I remember the most. The smile. Wide, bright, stretched just a little too far, like someone had pulled it onto her face and told her not to let it slip. She smelled different. That's the part one almost missed. It was faint, but definitely not her usual perfume. It wasn't even a scent I could place. Cologne, maybe. Musky, sharp, not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. Like someone had been close to her. Too close. She dropped her purse on the table and kicked off her shoes like nothing was wrong. "Hey, babe," she said, breezy casual. "Crazy day. I'm exhausted." I asked how dinner was. She froze barely a second, but I caught it. Then she launched into the story about grabbing food with some coworkers. Nothing formal, just spontaneous. Apparently a few people from her department decided to unwind after a long day, and she didn't want to bother texting me because it was all last minute. I nodded, pretending not to notice that she was talking too fast. Her voice was animated, her hands moving a lot, over-explaining. She listed names of coworkers I'd never heard of before. Threw in a funny anecdote about a waiter who couldn't pronounce the wine. Talked about traffic on the way there, how they had to wait for a table, how the service was slow. Felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced it on the drive home. I asked her what restaurant they went to, even though I already knew the answer. She didn't flinch. "Oh, some place called Amara? Amare? I dunno. Fancy, loud, kind of overrated." I just said, "Huh." She laughed, loud and forced. Then she reached into her purse, like she needed to keep moving, keep the scene going. I think that was her defense mechanism, movement. If she kept things flowing, maybe I wouldn't get the chance to ask the question that could unravel it all. Then, almost out of nowhere, she turned the tables on me. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she snapped, suddenly defensive. "You think I'm lying or something?" I was caught off guard. I hadn't even said anything. Maybe my face gave me away, or maybe she was waiting for the suspicion to surface so she could get ahead of it. She crossed her arms and leaned against the counter. Eyes narrowed like I was the one being unreasonable. "Seriously, Adam, what? You check one bank statement and now I'm on trial?" I tried to stay calm. "I didn't say anything." "Yeah, but you're thinking it. Jesus, you always do this. Anytime I go out, it's like you're waiting to catch me in something." That wasn't true. And we both knew it. I'd never snooped, never doubted her before. But now she was angry, way angrier than the situation called for, and it felt like she was trying to drown out her own guilt with volume. She kept going. You know what? This is exhausting. I go out for one night, and you're over here acting like I cheated on you. I hadn't said that, but her saying it, naming it, made my stomach drop. She grabbed a glass of water, slammed it on the table, then laughed bitterly. This is insane. You're insane. God, I can't even go to dinner without being interrogated. That was the moment I knew something was off. Not because of what she said, but how she said it. The way she was spinning the whole thing around so fast it gave me whiplash. She didn't deny anything. She didn't even pause to consider that my concern might be valid. She just went straight for deflection and guilt. And still, the details of her night kept coming. Too many details. Most people forget the name of their appetizer, not the breed of the waiter's dog or the number of times someone ordered refills. It was like she was building a wall of trivia to keep me from climbing toward the truth. Eventually, the argument fizzled out into silence. She stormed off to the bedroom, mumbling something about how tired she was and how she wasn't going to deal with this again. But we'd never had this argument before. There was no again. I sat at the table long after she'd gone to bed, just staring at nothing. The air in the house felt heavy, like something invisible had moved in and settled between us. I thought about the perfume, the weird smile, the overly rehearsed timeline, the restaurant that was suddenly too loud to mention in passing. And then I realized something I haven't stopped thinking about since. Excuses aren't improvised. They're built, carefully, quietly, in the background, long before the lie is ever spoken. And if someone's excuse shows up before you even ask the question, chances are they already know they're guilty. The next morning felt different. Not in a dramatic lightning strikes kind of way. Just off. Like waking up in a room you've slept in 100 times, only to notice the picture on the wall is slightly crooked. Nothing's obviously wrong, but something is. Lily was already gone by the time I woke up. She'd left a note on the counter. Something quick and cheerful. Early meeting, didn't want to wake you. Love you. The smiley face at the end looked too perfect, like it had been rehearsed 100 times. I stared at it for a while, then crumpled it in my fist and tossed it in the trash. That was the moment the dam broke. I didn't go looking for confirmation. Came to me, in pieces, in memories, little things I'd ignored or brushed off because I didn't want to seem paranoid. Or worse, because I didn't want to admit that something might actually be wrong. But now, those things weren't just random moments anymore. They were clues. Red flags I'd dismissed as nothing. Like the way she'd started putting her phone face down every time we were together. At first, I thought she was just trying to be present. One of those people trying to be less online, you know? I even praised her for it once. It's nice that we don't have to compete with your phone, I said. And she smiled like I just validated something she didn't actually earn. But over time, I noticed it was more than that. Her phone would buzz, and she'd glance at it just long enough to read the message, then flip it over and lock the screen without replying. And if I asked about it? Oh, it's work. Always something. They don't respect boundaries. She stopped taking calls around me, too, even casual ones. Said it was stressful to mix work mode and home mode. I accepted it, respected it even. I told myself it made sense, boundaries, mental health, all that. But now I realize it was just distance. Distance dressed up like independence. There was the cologne in her car. God, I can't believe I missed that. It was subtle, just a hint. Like someone had been sitting in the passenger seat wearing something woodsy and expensive. I remember asking if she'd gotten a new air freshener, and she said, "No. I gave a coworker a ride last week. He wears too much cologne." It stuck. I laughed about it at the time. Even made a joke. Guess he left a souvenir. She laughed too. But there was something in her tone. A flicker of discomfort she tried to cover with a smile. And then there were the photos. Or more accurately, the missing ones. We had a shared cloud. Not out of control or surveillance or anything, just convenience. Vacations, birthdays, random selfies, they'd all upload there automatically. It was one of those little things that made our life feel connected. But a few weeks ago, I noticed something strange. A gap. I could see the timestamps, see where her phone had taken pictures. A full night out, clearly, but none of the images were there. Just a black hole in the timeline. I asked her about it and she shrugged. Oh, the app must have glitched. Or maybe I turned off auto-upload by accident. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the thing is, Lily never turned off auto-anything. She was the kind of person who checked her phone's battery health once a week and made spreadsheets for vacation packing lists. If she turned something off, she'd have a reason. And she'd remember. The more I thought about it, the more it unraveled. I remembered her mood swings. That was another thing I'd explained away. Some weeks, she was all smiles. Affectionate, playful, wanting to cook together or binge-watch old shows like we used to. Other weeks, she was distant, irritable, almost hollow. I chalked it up to stress. Work had been intense for her. She'd taken on a new role, more responsibility. I figured it was just pressure getting to her. But now I wonder if that pattern had nothing to do with her job, and everything to do with whatever else was going on behind the scenes. Maybe when things were good with him, she came home light. And when they weren't, that's when I got the cold shoulder. The tension. The version of her that treated my questions like attacks. There were the business trips, too. They used to be rare. Twice a year, maybe. But then they started coming more often. Short trips. Overnight mostly. Always with the same excuse. They're pushing the expansion. It's chaos right now. I didn't question it at first. I mean, she'd worked her way up. Promotions come with sacrifices, right? But now I can't stop thinking about the patterns. How those trips would always line up with weekends when I had commitments she knew I couldn't skip. A friend's wedding. A big project deadline. My brother's birthday. Convenient, wasn't it? All of this, the perfume, the phone, the pictures, the trips. It all clicked into place the morning after that dinner. Because that was when the story started breaking down. I opened her laptop. Not because I wanted to spy. I just needed to find a receipt. Something to back up her version of events. Part of me still hoped she was telling the truth, that I'd find a confirmation email or a group chat screenshot *T. But there was nothing. Not a single email about dinner plans. No Slack messages from coworkers about a late-night outing. Just silence. Digital silence. That's when I started rewatching the whole movie in my head, except this time, I saw it differently. The late-night showers after she'd get home from work drinks. The new underwear that appeared in her drawer that I hadn't seen before. Her sudden interest in spinning classes at 6 a.m. Even though she hated early mornings. And don't get me started on the new phone password. She said it was because of company policy, two-factor authentication, security update, blah blah blah. But they never made her change it before. Not in 6 years. It's amazing, really. All the things we let slide in the name of love. Because love makes you complicit. It makes you blind on purpose. You see something strange, and instead of asking questions, you smooth it over. You fill in the gaps with trust. You tell yourself there's no way they would do something like that. Not them, not the person you've built a life with. But the signs were always there. They weren't loud, but they were persistent. And once I started listening, really listening, I couldn't unhear them. Every excuse she gave started sounding more like a cover story than a conversation. Every smile she wore started to look more like a mask. And suddenly, I wasn't remembering a marriage anymore. I was putting together a puzzle. One that she had been trying very hard to keep me from finishing. I didn't go looking for proof. I really need that to be understood. This wasn't some witch hunt or late-night snooping session where I tore through drawers and scrolled through texts behind her back. I didn't want to catch Lily doing something wrong. I wanted to be wrong. I would have given anything for this to be a misunderstanding. For my doubts to be just paranoia wrapped in bad timing and stress. But the truth didn't wait for me to find it. It walked up and tapped me on the shoulder. It started with the car. Our car, technically. A little silver SUV we shared, though she drove it more often than I did. She'd taken it on one of her recent, overnight work trips, and mentioned that it felt a little off. Said it made a weird sound, maybe brakes or the alignment. Told me I should take it in when I had time. So I did. It was a small auto shop we'd been using for years, run by a guy named Rob. Good dude, honest, no nonsense. He recognized me the second I pulled in. "Hey Adam," he called out. "You here for the RV4? "Yeah," I said. "Lily said it's been acting up." He nodded and tapped something on his tablet. "Yep, I got the service alert about a week ago. Meant to call, but I figured it was handled. Says you scheduled it." I frowned. "I didn't." He looked down at the screen. "Huh, maybe it was Lily then." That made sense, or at least it would have, if the next thing he said hadn't knocked the breath out of me. The appointment was logged for last Thursday, at our satellite location off Route 8. Says it was checked in under your number. That stopped me cold. I hadn't been anywhere near Route 8. In fact, I didn't even know they had a second location. And Thursday? That was one of her late nights at the office. I remember because she texted me saying the team was behind on a pitch and they'd ordered Thai food to work through dinner. I pulled out my phone and opened the calendar. Last Thursday. She hadn't gotten home until almost 11 p.m. "Can I see the service history?" I asked. He nodded, handed me the tablet. There it was, a routine maintenance check, logged under my name and number, but at an address I didn't recognize. I asked Rob if I could grab the location, just out of curiosity. He didn't even blink. Printed it out for me. I sat in my car with the slip of paper in my hand for 10 solid minutes, staring at the address. Something about it gnawed at me. It wasn't near any of her usual routes. No clients out that way. No offices. No family. Just an area about 40 minutes outside the city. Mostly residential. Quiet. My gut twisted. I didn't want to be that guy, but I needed to know. Not assume. Not suspect. No. So I drove. Every mile out there felt heavier than the last. I didn't even put music on. Just silence. Me and my thoughts. Wondering what I'd do if I actually found something. Hoping I wouldn't. I pulled into the neighborhood just as the sun started going down. It was one of those picture-perfect communities with neatly trimmed hedges and driveways that all looked like they came off the same blueprint. But one house stood out. A modern build, big windows, dark wood panels. Clean. New. And parked in the driveway was her car. I recognized it instantly. Same dent on the back bumper. Same faded bumper sticker she swore she'd remove one day. I didn't pull up to the curb. I parked 2 houses down and sat there for a while, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I didn't want to be seen. Didn't want to do something stupid. I just wanted to know. So I stepped out of the car and walked down the sidewalk, as casually as I could, pretending to check my phone, looking like I belonged. I stopped when I got close enough to see through the window. She was there, barefoot, hair in a messy ponytail, holding a mug like she lived there, like she belonged there, and beside her a man, tall, unshaven, in a robe. His hand brushed hers as they stood by the kitchen island. They laughed about something. Not big, performative laughter, just soft, familiar, comfortable, like a couple, not like an affair. That's what struck me the hardest. This didn't look like sneaking around. It didn't look like shame or guilt. It looked like routine. Like this wasn't the first time she'd been there, and it wouldn't be the last. She reached up and adjusted something on a shelf, his shelf. He kissed her on the cheek as she did it. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. And that was when the numbness hit. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even feel angry in that moment. I just felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of me and replaced with air. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo, the house, the car in the driveway, the address on the mailbox. Not for revenge. Not for leverage. Just so I'd never doubt myself again. As I turned to walk away, my phone buzzed. It was her. A text. "Don't bother me." That's it. No context. No follow-up. Just a 5-second message that landed like a sledgehammer. She didn't know I was outside. She didn't know what I'd just seen. But for her to send that right then, at the same moment she was wrapped up in her little secret world, that was the part that broke something in me. I stared at the message. No reply. Got in the car. Drove away. Somewhere between the neighborhood and the highway, my emotions caught up. I had to pull over. Just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. Instead, I felt this eerie calm creep in. Like my body had hit its limit and refused to carry the weight anymore. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again, and again, and again. 20 calls, back to back. Her name lighting up the screen, flashing like a warning. I didn't answer, didn't need to. The moment I saw her in that kitchen with that man, barefoot and smiling like she didn't have a husband waiting at home, that was the moment I stopped being the fool in her story and started writing the end of it myself. I didn't go home right away. After I saw her, barefoot in that stranger's kitchen like it was hers, I drove around aimlessly. No destination, just motion. The kind of drive where you don't remember the turns or the traffic lights. Just you, the road, and a silence so thick it feels like insulation. Somewhere along the way, I stopped at a gas station. Not because I needed gas, but because I needed to stand on solid ground. I walked into the store, bought a bottle of water, and stood outside for a while, watching cars go by. I kept waiting for the wave of anger to hit, but it didn't. No rage, no meltdown, just a dull sense of finality. A line had been crossed, and whatever was left of us had been burned behind her like a bridge. Eventually, I drove home, slow, calm, like I was heading to a place I used to know. When I walked through the front door, everything looked exactly the same. Same keys in the bowl, same framed photo of us smiling in Charleston 2 years ago. Same coat she always forgot to hang. But none of it felt real anymore. It felt like walking onto a stage after the play had ended. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't throw things. I didn't sit down and cry. I just stood in the middle of the living room and took inventory. Then I went upstairs, grabbed her suitcases from the closet, and began packing. Not in a rage-fueled frenzy, no grabbing drawers and throwing them in a heap. I folded things, paired shoes, found her jewelry boxes and tucked them between layers of clothing so they wouldn't break. I even zipped up her makeup bag, double-checked that nothing would spill. It wasn't about kindness. It was about closure. This was me reclaiming the space. Every item that went into the suitcase made the air a little clearer. By the time I finished, it was close to midnight. I placed the suitcases by the front door. Then I changed the locks. It sounds dramatic, I know. But after what I'd seen, after the texts and the lies and the man in the robe, the last thing I wanted was for her to walk back in like she still had a place here. She didn't. Afterward, I opened my laptop and began untangling our life. First, the accounts, joint streaming services, shared grocery delivery apps, even the stupid couples playlist on Spotify that we hadn't updated in months. I removed her access to everything. Not out of spite, just practicality. She had another life now. Let her stream music with him. I opened our shared calendar and deleted every upcoming event that included both our names. Dinner with her parents, that friend's engagement party, the weekend cabin trip we'd never taken. It was almost therapeutic, like deleting a version of myself that had believed we were still solid. Next came the financial stuff. I created a new checking account, moved half the money into it, froze our joint credit card, opened a file on my desktop and titled it Separation. Inside, I started logging everything. Dates, screensh *TS, the photo I'd taken outside the house. I wasn't sure I'd need it, but I also wasn't about to walk into whatever came next unprepared. I worked until 3 a.m. without noticing the time. It wasn't that I wasn't tired, but my body had flipped a switch. I wasn't running on emotion anymore. I was running on logic, calculation. This wasn't heartbreak. It was triage. When I finally collapsed into bed, alone, in a room that still smelled like her, I stared at the ceiling and realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think all night. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry. I was free. Not the triumphant kind of freedom, not yet. But something quieter. A freedom that sounded like silence. That felt like stillness. There was no chaos anymore. No guessing. No checking the clock to see when she'd be home. No wondering why she was smiling at her phone or why she always showered the second she came in from work. That chapter was closed. In its place was the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. And for the first time in months, it sounded like peace. When I woke up a few hours later, the house was still. Morning light poured in through the blinds, soft and slow. I walked downstairs, poured myself a cup of coffee, and stood in the kitchen holding the mug with both hands like I needed the warmth to remind me I was still here. I didn't feel like a man whose life had just collapsed. I felt like someone who had crawled out from under the wreckage. I checked my phone. More missed calls. More texts. From her. Where are you? Please answer. I'm coming home. We need to talk. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. If she had something to say, she could say it when she saw the packed bags and the new locks. Around noon, I left the house. I needed air. Ended up at a park across town, the one with the big fountain and the quiet walking paths. I sat on a bench, watching ducks glide across the water, and thought about how surreal it was that just 24 hours ago I'd still been living in a lie. That I'd kissed her goodbye that morning, told her I loved her, and meant it. Now, I didn't even know who I'd said it to. She texted again in the afternoon. Can we just talk, please? I'll be home later. Still, I didn't reply. When evening came, I lit a candle on the dining table. Not for ambience, just for calm. The scent reminded me of the early days, before everything got complicated. I sat in the kitchen, eating leftovers, listening to a podcast I wasn't really hearing, waiting. Around 11 p.m. The headlights swept across the front yard. Then came the sound of tires crunching the driveway. Car door slamming. Footsteps on the porch. She knocked. Not hard. Just enough. I opened the door and there she was. Pale. Disheveled. Holding her phone like it was a lifeline. Eyes red. Makeup smudged. Dressed in something casual, like she hadn't changed since that morning. Adam, she whispered. Can we talk? I didn't say anything. Just stepped aside, pointed to the suitcases. She stared at them, frozen. Then her eyes flicked back to mine. You changed the locks, she said. I nodded. Yeah. She looked like she wanted to cry. Or scream. Or both. But instead, she just said, this is a mistake. You're overreacting. I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. No, I said. This is clarity. She stepped forward like she wanted to plead her case, like we were still in a courtroom and she could win the jury over. But her voice cracked before she could finish the first sentence. Every explanation she tried to form collapsed under its own weight. She didn't apologize, didn't confess. She just stood there, surrounded by bags she hadn't packed, looking like a stranger caught trespassing in a life she no longer belonged to. I didn't want it to be like this, she finally said. It is, I replied, and that was it. She took the bags, one by one, loaded them into the trunk, didn't slam the door, didn't yell. When she drove away, I didn't watch her taillights disappear. I just closed the door, and behind it the silence didn't feel empty, felt earned. She didn't leave a note, didn't text goodbye. No final I love you, no attempt at closure. Just the sound of her car pulling out of the driveway and vanishing into the night like she'd never lived here at all. I stood at the window for a few minutes expecting to feel something, a breakdown, a flood of regret, a rush of anger, but none of it came. I just stood there in the stillness of my own decision, watching the darkness settle over the street like it was washing the day away. Then I turned off the lights, walked upstairs, and slept through the night for the first time in weeks. No midnight glances at the clock. No wondering when she'd get home. No phantom sounds of her key in the lock. Just sleep. Cold, dreamless, uninterrupted. The next morning, I woke to sunshine leaking in through the curtains and the sound of birds outside the window. The house was still, like it was breathing again after holding its breath for too long. I didn't rush to get dressed. I didn't check my phone. I just sat in bed for a while, letting it all catch up to me. The fact that she was gone, that the bags were gone, that the locks were changed and the silence in the house was real and earned. By noon, I'd filed the preliminary paperwork for divorce. I'd already spoken with a lawyer the day after I found out. The call had been brief, mostly logistics. The hardest part was just saying the words out loud. My wife is having an affair. I want to end the marriage. But now, holding the documents in my hand, it didn't feel like some heavy, tragic act. It felt clean, like cutting off something that had already rotted. I printed them, signed what I could on my own, and set a meeting to finalize the rest. And just like that, it was real. I expected to feel gutted. But all I felt was relief. Pure, simple relief. I spent the afternoon cleaning, not out of stress, but out of purpose. I stripped the bed, changed the sheets, took down the photos of us from the walls one by one. I didn't burn them or throw them in the trash. I just slid them into a box and put it in the attic, next to old holiday decorations and unused camping gear. Later, I brewed a pot of coffee and drank it on the front porch. The fall breeze was sharp but calming, and for the first time in months, I noticed how quiet my street could be when my head wasn't full of doubt. And then, just as I was starting to feel okay again, she came back. It was a little after 11 that night. I was reading in bed, the dog-eared pages of a novel I hadn't touched in months finally pulling me in, when I heard the knock. Not the doorbell, the knock. Soft, hesitant. 3 slow taps. I didn't move at first. Didn't want to. I thought maybe I was imagining it. Then came another. I got up, walked downstairs, flipped on the porch light, and looked through the peephole. There she was, Lily, wearing the same hoodie she used to steal from me when we first started dating. Hair tied back, face pale, eyes red, like she hadn't slept. She was clutching her phone in both hands like it was the only thing holding her together. I opened the door halfway. She didn't speak at first. Just looked at me like she was trying to decide which version of me she was going to get. The calm one, the angry one, or the one who might still love her enough to let her in. "Hey," she whispered. I didn't say anything. I know I shouldn't have come," she said, stepping forward slightly. "But I didn't know where else to go." I nodded toward the driveway. "Looks like you figured it out." She flinched. I didn't mean it to sound cruel, but it came out sharp anyway. Her voice cracked. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer, just stepped aside and gestured to the suitcases still by the front door, the ones she hadn't taken with her the first time. She looked at them, then at me. Her mouth opened, like she was about to explain everything, but nothing came out. "Why are you here, Lily?" I asked, arms crossed. "You made it pretty clear what you wanted." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know what I wanted. I made a mistake." "Which part?" I asked. "Lying? Cheating? Living a second life behind my back? Or sending don't bother me while you were playing house in someone else's kitchen?" Her lip trembled. She stepped inside just far enough to be out of the cold, but not far enough to feel like she belonged. "I didn't plan any of this," she said. "No," I agreed. "You just let it happen, over and over." She started crying then. Not loud, dramatic sobs, just the kind of quiet crying that happens when someone realizes they're too late. "I want to fix it," she said. "Please, I want to fix it." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd, like a person asking for superglue after shattering a window with a brick. "It's already broken," I said. "You just didn't notice until the pieces cut you." She stepped forward, like she wanted to reach for my hand, but I didn't move. She stopped herself. "I still love you," she said. "No," I replied. "You love the idea of not being the bad guy. You love the version of me that forgives you so fast you don't have to feel this." She didn't deny it, didn't argue. She just stood there, tears running silently down her face. And for a second, just a second, I almost softened, almost let her in, because she was still Lily, still the girl I'd built a life with, the girl I used to believe in. But that second passed, and what replaced it wasn't hate. It was clarity. "I'm filing," I said quietly. "The papers are already in motion." Her eyes widened. "Please, Adam, don't do this. We can go to counseling. We can work through it." I said. "We stopped existing the second you chose him." She didn't try to argue after that. Just stood there, broken in a way I didn't feel responsible for anymore. "I don't know where to go," she whispered. I nodded toward the bags. Start with not here. And that was it. She picked up her suitcases, one in each hand, and walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't slam the door. Didn't say goodbye. Just left. When the sound of her car faded into the night, I sat on the steps for a long time, wrapped in the stillness. No shaking hands. No racing thoughts. No fear. Just calm. The kind of calm that comes when the storm ends and you realize the worst part wasn't the damage. It was how long you stood in the rain pretending it wasn't happening. The next morning, I filed the final divorce paperwork. Felt like shutting a door I should have closed months ago. Lily kept calling, texting from new numbers, begging to talk. I didn't answer. I didn't need more lies or guilt. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. Some betrayals don't deserve second chances. And letting go wasn't weakness, it was self-respect. Months passed. I rebuilt everything: routine, peace, even joy. Got a dog. Learned to cook. The silence at home didn't feel empty anymore. It felt clean. I heard Lily moved in with him, then moved out. Her smiles online looked forced. Mine weren't. That "don't bother me" text was the last thing she said that was honest. And it ended there. The rest of my life finally began.